It is a pleasure to be with you all today. And I guarantee you at the end of this time, I bet you will not only be back for the December 8th and the December 15th installments, but I hope you'll feel like you would have spent hundreds of dollars and traveled hundreds of miles to be at this kind of seminar. But today we're virtual and have the privilege of having three great panelists that are going to be a part of our plan. As you think about today, we really connect our work to our purpose. And so as we start talking about today, career transition and the means by which we do that most effectively, let's not forget that Ephesians 2:10 tells us God prepared things in advance for us to do. He has a desire for us to be a part of the work that he's prepared in advance for us to do. And we're going to work on trying to see how we can help structure understanding and learning that. We've got a 30-minute workout for you today. So if you didn't make it to the gym this morning, no problem. We're going to walk through with our panelists in these different arenas: talent acquisition, talent development, and then overall workforce planning and talent management. Nikki Gibson joins us. She is the Director of Talent Acquisition at JCPenney's. This is her second stint at JCPenney, so you know they admire what she's able to do. She's got experience working with Johnson & Johnson, Yum brands across multiple industries. And many times she's been a part of the Social Recruiting Strategies Conference. And so she has a special interest in and insight to how talent is identified and attracted to different organizations. Undergraduate from Mississippi State in chemical engineering, and then an MBA from Baylor. She joins us as a proud mom and proud Alpha Kappa Alpha alum. We have Ian Marshall with us as well, also a Baylor MBA graduate. Ian is currently the VP of Operational Learning and Development from Texas Tech, but got to be is all he's been with just for a short period of time, but his career is really a remarkable list of organizations: Sabre, Ernst & Young, Aramark, and others. So what we have for you today is a panel of true experts who are going to share their thoughts and ideas, and we're anxious to hear from them. So Dilshan, why don't you kick us off?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Let me get this slide going here. All right. I'm really excited to be here. Greg, thank you so much for that introduction. Really proud to be here, happy to be here. And this is a subject that Ian, myself, and Nikki are really committed to personally and professionally. So thank you for the honor and the privilege to present to fellow colleagues around the world and in this particular venue. As Greg said, this is a workshop. This is not so much us kind of sharing just our knowledge, but I think each of us in this sort of panel and also in the attendees have experiences. But like anything in life, it's great to sharpen the saw. It's great to have a dialogue about this stuff. So Ian and I hope to sort of impart some knowledge, sharpen some knowledge, and also be able to have a discussion with you. So that's kind of the intent of our presentation. And as anything Baylor, we wanted to sort of bring the best out of Baylor. So Ian and I thought, what better topic than say, unleash the bear. Each of you guys have special gifts. God's given you special talents. Sometimes we hold those things back, especially in moments of change. And we wanted to inspire you to change and be sort of bold about the gifts that you've been given. So the topic is unleash the bear in you. So just sharing our whole kind of plan, right? So we thought about, you know, you in the center, and what does it look like in a venue when you do a transition or go through a career change. So planning to play the game, and post game. And today we're going to stay focused on the pre-game. And the pre-game is broken up into two areas: discovery and planning. The game which is our next session, is execution and agility. And the last session, which is kind of how do you bring this all together, is adjourning and reviewing. So today, Ian and I will focus on the discovery and planning. This is an area, and hope you remember this, this is an area that most people don't pay attention to. So while the other two areas are equally important, it is very important to start with the end in mind. And sort of, if you take nothing out of this note, know that most people do not do this part of their work well. They often kind of miss it, or they have to backtrack to it. So just by taking this sort of session and knowing that you need to discover and plan, you're ahead of most of your competition out there in the marketplace. Personally, I think it'll be giving you a lot of personal peace, knowing that you have a plan and you're discovering what you want to achieve here going forward. So as all things in life, there are many ways that things could go, and in discovery and planning is no different. There are proactive and reactive reasons that you probably will take it. And I labeled a couple of them. This is not to be all encompassing. You probably have many more items that you have in your head, but proactive would be you're seeking to grow your career. You think it's time, you want to achieve a high level role, or you actually want to improve your compensation. That's proactive. On the reactive side, some of us have been impacted like this in life. Some of you may be already going through redundancy. I mean, as you know, with COVID-19, there's a lot of people who are in this situation. So that is an unfortunate event. But even in that event, you can know that discovery and planning will help you. On the another part of being proactive is you may be facing a relocation. You may have a spouse, a colleague, or you want to make a move to another part of the country or the world. That is another proactive item. Again, another reactive item is supervision. And this is one of the reasons that people leave organizations. You may have a ceiling or a situation with your direct organizational leadership that you don't agree with them. And that could be a reactive situation you're dealing with. And last but not least, you might get somebody like Nikki calling up on you. You are going about your daily life, and she has something great out there for you in the world. You never planned for a move, and that happens. I will give you my personal example. I was going about life at Sabre, and I got a call from a recruiter just before the pandemic. And so I made a career change in the middle of a pandemic. I never planned for it. I always wanted it, but I didn't plan for it. So that was a proactive situation that I thought about, but it came at me reactively and I flipped it back to proactive. And I want to call that out to you. Some of these things are not exactly one swim lane. Things shift from time to time, and you need to be able to sort of pivot. The summary of all of this, whether you're going through a proactive situation or a reactive situation or both, discovery and planning will help you along the way. So what does discovery and planning look like, and what you need to do? And I thought I'll bucket these into 4 major areas, and obviously underneath them are subsets. As you go through your discovery and planning, you want to target the type of company you want to be in or you see yourself. And there are many reasons why you want to do that. Company size, the revenue of the company, how it's set up. In my case, I wanted to work for a PE firm. I've never done that. I've only worked for publicly traded companies and privately traded private companies. I wanted to be in a PE firm that'll give me enough knowledge about that space. So I intended to be there. You may have a different reason and different size of company. The number of employees, it may matter to you, it may not, but that again, you'd investigate what works for you. Like I said, whether it's private or public, what kind of industry? And a very untold and unsort of inspected area is the type of culture. What kind of company is this? do you fit its values, and can you kind of succeed in that area? And you need to take the time to do that. Again, the pace of that discovery might change depending on your reactive or proactive search. The second one, I think, also is a pretty important area to discover is geography, your personal location preferences. My case, my wife is from Kansas and she would like to be closer to her parents. And she has given me a list of needs, as in we will fly to see mom and dad every quarter. So I have decided on what that logistically looks like. And I bring the spouse into this. Some of you may have spouses, some of you may not. These decisions and discovery are not only for you, it is also to discuss with the people you love and hold dear the most. And most candidates sometimes don't do that. And when you go to the recruiting phase, it often kind of like confuses the recruiter, or even you may have to backtrack a bit. I encourage you to have these discussions early in your discovery phase. The location of role may matter, how much you want to drive, whether you want to travel, et cetera, et cetera. And the overall responsibility of the role. And that has a impact on how you travel, right? So based on your responsibility level, travel is associated with that. You need to have those discussions about geography because they are sort of dependent on other items that you might want to consider. The third one is the role itself. What type of function do you want to be in? What type of role? Is it an individual contributor or a people leader? At what kind of scale? Is it a local role within a certain state? Is it a regional role? It is a global role, so on and so forth. And obviously, whether it involves a level of travel. Your overall onboarding to that role, your readiness to that role, and the kind of learnings you need to have to be in that phase. So my example is I wanted to be in a technology firm that is in cybersecurity, and I started learning a lot about cybersecurity. And when I interviewed, I knew nothing about cybersecurity, but when I interviewed with the chief operating officer and the CEO, they liked me for my HR skill set, but they liked that I had done enough homework about the industry and I understood some of the basics of how they made money, what their competition looked like, and what their future prospects are. So you have to do a little bit of homework to the target role you need because it tells you that you're prepared and you understand. And in that discovery, you may discover things about the company. And lastly, on the role part, sponsorship and mentoring. Who are people, if you get this role, that you can surround yourself to continue to sort of have a board of directors to improve your capability? Some of you on the call say, Dilshan, what does that have to do with the final job? This discovery phase generally is the easier part. It allows you the time to kick the tires, if you will, and really spend some time wiring yourself to be successful. And all of that stuff should be, if you have the time, done in a discovery phase. Just skip the slide. So the fourth one, and before I kind of summarize, is your target compensation. What kind of rewards do you want to have? Short-term incentives, long-term incentives. Again, culture comes into play here as well. The benefits. Some of us care about time off, and obviously what the work-life balance and harmony looks like. Again, these are items you may be able to discover through technology, through relationships, but it's important to at least start penciling in what your desires are. And once you pare those down, you're able to kind of sort of shortlist a group of organizations, roles, geographies, and rewards that you want. This is a white canvas for you to think about this stuff. Life doesn't turn out like this exactly, but it allows you to dream a little bit and sort of start putting some expectations down on paper. So I wanted to give you something that was really easy. That, writing things down is important. And I have coached many, many people, and all these people have told me that they have it in their head. And that's great, but that is kind of burdensome at times. And sometimes you miss a couple of things. So my encouragement to everybody in the call is take the time to take your discovery items and document them. and in an easy format of what's acceptable. These are the things that you will not negotiate on, you will not accept. And in my case, there might be items that I will not relocate to Philadelphia, period, end of story. Nothing wrong with Philadelphia, too far away from me for my personal reasons, right? So write those things down. By the way, don't be inflexible with these items, because as time continues, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, maybe a year, things will change. So you to come revisit these items. But for now, you should document it. Then the items that you are accepting, the things that you're willing to accept that would kind of give you positive aspiration to your needs and wants and what you aspire to have. And then the third bucket is the things you desire, where you don't hold back, you sort of dream as big as you can, and you put those in. Obviously, dreams need to be realistic, but there's nothing wrong in sort of dreaming. This three bucket approach really helps you kind of take some of your dreaming and thinking and sort of your discovery down on paper. And as I put as a key point is, these items are very contextual. It changes based on your current situation and the current kind of timing of your situation. So be flexible, but start documenting it. So I wanted to give you a real example. I like real examples, and I coach a lot of people on a regular basis. This example is of a mid-career leader who I know personally and wants to meet with me, and he and I meet probably every other month just to have a conversation. He's happy in his job, but he desires to have a career transition. So he took the time to document it, email it to me. I have blacked out some stuff to keep everything confidential, but as you can see on the unacceptable area, he is not willing to travel more than 20%. He wants to not move from DFW. He wants to maintain his current pay. You see 100% fixed pay. And you have a couple other items, right? So you can see the type of items that he is willing to not accept. You go to the acceptable bucket, you can see he wants to work in a product development focused firm, wants to travel a certain range, and the type of title. He is willing to take a senior director job with the proper growth package. Again, these are pretty broad, but he has written it down where he can understand it and I can coach him and support him. And then his desirable bucket, he would like to be in a high growth industry that's innovation focused. VP would be his ideal dream job, and he has labeled the size of company. I kind of peppered a little bit there. This you can tailor to yourself because you may have different views on how you want to go. But the most important thing is that this individual has written it down. And every so often when we talk, we kind of look at it. It helps him with his planning phase. And I know Ian will go into some level of detail. And over the next couple of sessions, we'll talk about how it kind of becomes real when you go into executing this in real life. So the point of this visual is to tell you how simple it can be, but how important it is for you to express yourself in writing. So with that, I will hand this over to Ian.
Thank you, Dilshan. Yeah, and I want to echo what Dilshan said. Just a quick word of thanks for attending. We recognize you're busy, you have a lot going on, and it means the world to both of us to be able to present today. And thanks to our friends at Baylor for the invitation. If I'm not mistaken, Tess, do we have the results to the survey that could be populated if possible? Okay, thank you. Just from a frame of reference, it's helpful for Dilshan and I to know where we are from a career journey. So looks like over a majority are at the mid-career point. Very good, thanks so much. So, what Dilshan shared is critically important. That discovery piece is such an important part of the process. And I would echo what Dilshan said. The two items that we're talking through are fundamentally those areas that can be done before and don't always have the content or the time spent with them, but the payoff is in the long run, if you will. So as a quick favor to you all on the call, I did a quick search. I love just doing a quick search on the interweb to find out what's going on in the world of planning for a job search. And I don't know if you all are this way, but I'm more impressed with the fact that there's 3.2 billion results I'm also impressed that it took half a second to figure that out. But at the end of the day, as Dilshan said, we want this to be a chance to provide insight to you. It can be overwhelming. And you know, what we're going to be sharing today and in December is just a way to chunk it down to make it a little bit easier for you along the way. So the good news is we've taken these 3.2 billion results and we have refined it, distilled it. We've done you the favor of distilling it down into 24 easy steps. And so I know you may be thinking, wow, that's impressive. And it is. And so we want to think, you know, we want you to see this. I love this video or visual because it's also the fall. And we feel that this is a good one. So just wanting to highlight a few of these 24, you know, planning ahead is always a good one. You know, the applying with confidence that you want to do that. I love the one pray. We certainly don't want to forget that. And hopefully that, you know, if these things are going to fall to the ground, the praying is never going to fall to the ground because that's absolutely what keeps us going. But all kidding aside, again, it can be quite overwhelming to do the planning phase. And so 24 easy steps is about 18 too many. And so what Dilshan and I would argue is there's just a handful of items for you to start to think through as it relates to the actual planning process. And we want to start to talk through that to make it just a skosh easier for you as you go through this process. And so as we start to look at how do we make planning made easy, you may have multiple goals. And so I would go back to the argument and discussion we've had, which is it could be that, yes, a new career is a goal. It could be as part of your discovery, you recognize that you're ready for a broader role, or you're ready to take on a different and more challenging team. You may be a problem solver and you want to get in there and fix something. You have multiple goals that could be part of this process, but at the end of the day, we want you to feel comfortable knowing not only have I done the discovery, but you've done some soul searching, if you will, to really understand why this is happening, where is it going, and what's your plan? How do you plan for this? And I would just reiterate, this is all before you really go down the path of applying. These are the things that can be done well in advance as we go through this. And Dilshan shared a few. I think one thing that I would echo that he mentioned, and in our preparation, he and I should discuss this quite a bit, that idea of taking the time to write things down. And it's not necessarily just writing it down from the standpoint of what do you want, it's also in the moment. It's that idea that when you have and you're going through the process, we would encourage you to continue to document different steps of the process. I love this slide. I love the content here. And Dilshan had an article he found, and it you know, when you read it, you think, okay, this makes a ton of sense. But think of it from this perspective. If documenting is critically important, and in a planning stage, we want you to be ready to get to that next stage, a simple spreadsheet can make a ton of difference. So I'm just going to walk through a couple of these, and feel free, Dilshan, at the end, if you have additional items to add to it, we certainly want to do that. But when you think about the process, the actual planning, as well as the Excel and the different columns, a couple things to keep in mind. If you're applying for multiple roles, knowing the role that you've applied for in the company, the name, the exact title of the role, the company, these are all parts of the process that you can keep up with so that you know when did you apply and where did you apply for that. I think the other one that is really critically important is that second one, that idea of linking. Have the job applicant link. Many firms nowadays, you all know this, use applicant tracking systems. Each of them have some sort of security measure to get into those. And I don't know about you, but keeping up with 27 different passwords is exhausting. It may be worth creating your own email for the job search. It may be worth creating a universal sign-on that you can use against all applicant tracking systems. Just a way to take the stress. We want to remove the stress as you do this, and this is a good way to do that. The date, when did you apply? Again, you may not recall, you may get bounce back emails, but this is a good way to keep up with the date that you applied and how you applied. You may have gone through LinkedIn, you may have gone to the actual website, just knowing where exactly you dropped that resume off, if you will, for the role. If you have anybody that referred you, this is a good place to put that detail in, as well as a status column, red, yellow, green, if you will. And so much of this is customizable. Finally, I'm sorry, the last three, the track your applicant process. Where is it? Where do you stand in the process? If the role has been filled, some notes about what you may have gleaned from that. Was this what you wanted? Was it not? What interested you in that role, so that you can have that for future. The interview details is interesting because, again, so much of it is Zoom. We're going to be virtual, and so much of what the organization I'm blessed to work for is virtual. We're doing very, very few, if any, in-person interviews. But if you're getting the interview details, do you have the Zoom link? Who is going to be on there? Who's the panel? Where are they located? A few front-end questions along the way, just as you plan for this, is good detail to have. On the flip side is this idea of being able to have a communication tracker. When did you send an email? When did you send a thank you to whom? I think the other piece that I could go as far as to argue is that you have another column that really might have some specific information relative to the group that you've met with. So if you've met with a recruiter for the organization and they happen to mention 2 or 3 items that you find unique about themselves or the organization, document it. The interviewers, document it. Those little things that you can recall in future conversations go a long way. It separates you. At the end of the day, we want you to be able to separate yourself from others, and the documentation on the front end to keep up with these pieces really help you distinguish yourself as an applicant who's listening, who's done the research, who's prepared. All of these things really help to make that difference in what you're doing. And finally is the resume version. It sounds simple. If you're taking the time to change the resume to fit the job, which we would encourage, you don't want to get caught flat-footed looking at the wrong resume. So if you have 3 different versions of the resume, you want to know which resume went with which job. And this gives you a chance to be able, when that person calls, to pull that resume up and speak to that particular one. Again, that just gives you the ability to not feel stressed. You're perfectly ready to go. And behind the scenes, you're perfectly well positioned, and the recruiter, the executive you're working with, whomever, they have no idea of all the work that you've done to get to this point. I want to pause. Dilshan, anything that you would add to this particular slide from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, you'll hear a consistent theme for me, right? It is important to document these things because we don't need to carry that in our heads every day. And I coach a lot of people, so I'm giving you the practical side of this. Everybody feels when they have it in their head, it's burdensome. We have been given a computing system better than most things in the world, but why carry that in your computer space? Put it on a side. And the value of that is over time, you can see patterns emerging, trends emerging. You may be rushing through one door. When one door is close to you, you might as well redeploy your energy in other areas, right? So when this gentleman that I'm coaching, he sent me his tracker and I'm like, why are you still going after that situation? It seems that it has kind of gone cold. He said, well, I think I have a chance. I said, would you not rather deploy your time here and start improving your pipeline? Because you've been sitting on the same pipeline. Those of you guys are in the sales business, you're selling yourself here, right? So you need to sort of measure that. And honestly, the burden of taking it off your head is important. And I think the third part for me is most people that I coach at the beginning saying, yeah, Dilshan, thank you for the advice, but I'm not going to track it. There's probably a few people who track it. About 10 people, 10% of my group that tracks it. And the guys and gals who track it say, I found it easy to deal with, and I didn't realize it was going to get 3 months or 6 months. There's an individual who had a job, moving to another job, took him 9 months to get to the target that he wanted to. And nobody has patience over 9 months to kind of keep everything in your head. In fact, you forget a lot of conversation. You start sort of bleeding into conversations. So I share the practical side of it. If it's not about the ability to keep it in your head, sheer time will change the situation. So again, trying to sort of part some real world examples, document it, and it'll set you free.
Love it. Yeah, and especially in those longer time frame. That's a great illustration. The longer they go, you've got other things going on. Why not utilize the technology to help with that? Okay, so now that we know that the documentation is important, let's talk about these handful of items that we would argue would be important to do from a planning standpoint. So forgive me, we went a bit of a sports route. We'll keep it very non-sportsy, but just for the sake of argument, we thought we'd have a little fun with this. And think of it from three standpoints. These are all things that are done before you get to the interview process. And so off-season, optional team activity, those of you may have heard them as OTAs, and then training camp. With each one of those, the severity of structure gets higher. So think of it from this perspective. So off-season, baseball's in its off-season right now. Those players are still keeping up with their fitness, but they're not as worried about the day-to-day conditioning. It is, though, a focus. It's something that they're constantly working through. It just may not have the structure. So our argument here would be in the off-season is, this is a great chance for you to plan. Start to think about who you are, what motivates you, and what would bring you to a job. At the end of the day, what do you want to do and why is that? I think the other part of this is a great opportunity to update your play sheet. And what we would call that is your resume, your online presence, your brand. So there's so much out there in the way of resume help. And certainly, there's do's and don'ts. You can look those up. There's a ton of resources. The online presence is critical. LinkedIn is a big one, as we all know. It's a great resource. I think the other piece of that is, what is your brand? Being able to understand what do you bring to that? And I'll talk about that more in a second, but that brand that you have and that awareness, what's your elevator pitch? If you get in with one of those senior leaders, what is the story that you can tell? This is a great chance to start planning that and getting that ready to go. The next function, that next thought there is optional team activities, OTAs. The NFL uses this all the time. This is a more structured, but not always mandatory step for the players. We see this as a great chance for you to have a little bit more structure. So reach out to your network. I used to work for a fabulous organization. The head of HR there, one day we were just discussing various things, and this idea of transition came up. And I remember one of the things he said was, go dance, sit down, and write out all of your network, all of the folks that are near and dear, then walk away and come back and add more, because more than likely you will have forgotten 10 or 15. Now, the nice thing is LinkedIn has made that very, very easy, because you can quickly look at your network. You could also sort them from those that you really know all the way down. But at the end of the day, start reaching out to that network. I think the encouragement there is, many of you may have been reached out to about roles. What is it that you would want to do in return? The other part of this is start to practice your interview skills. You've not applied for anything, but start practicing. Getting the words out of your mouth to share examples is such a critical component. It adds polish. You can tell when someone has taken the time to practice answering questions, and not just hypothetical, but the behavior-based questions with specifics, results, details, outcomes. It's going to be clunky at first, and that's okay. Have a loved one or a family friend or someone be able to do this. They're often going to be your best critic to give you the feedback, but would encourage you again and again to practice. This is a big one to help you get really comfortable when you get that, especially phone screens all the way through the in-person or virtual interviews. And then finally, training camp. We all know training camp. That's where there's a lot more structure. So to that end, some of the feedback that in what I've seen and we've used is this idea of get feedback from those that can provide you with good feedback. And this is going to involve some vulnerability on your part. We're big fans of multi-rater assessments where I work. This is a good chance you could do it where there's no anonymity, or you can do it where there is. But that idea of seeking to understand and get the feedback about yourself so that you can be ready for that. Often the questions that get asked are, what are your strengths and weaknesses? What better way to do that than to have that detail from others and be able to say, I proactively asked, here's what I know, and here's what I'm working on. And the last part of this is know your worth. And that's not just a financial number. I would say certainly that's a piece of the puzzle. Clearly it's a big piece of the puzzle. I think the big piece there is to know your worth. What are you going to bring the organization? Start to think about what is it that distinguishes you from others. This is in that planning phase, because you're going to have the opportunity to have this conversation. That's a great way, both in the communication you send, but also when you have these interviews. Here's what I will bring to your team. Here's what I know are my strengths. and be able to have that. Again, all of this is in the planning piece of the puzzle, really wanting to get to that portion. One quick slide, and Dilshan, I'll have you speak to this as well. There's a lot of digital, there's a lot of technology that's out there. I've spoken about LinkedIn. It's a big one that we use, I've used. Glassdoor is a huge resource as well to really dive into that. All of these are really helpful. I mean, from your perspective, Dilshan, which ones are the ones that you use as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think we wanted to share, but there's a lot to this, and we certainly don't have the time to go into everything here, but we live in a digital world, and recruiters are obviously using digital as a way, and I know that Nikki will go into it during her session, but Glassdoor is a great place to do research, try to understand the company, what other people are saying, and I know most of us do use that, but I certainly have found it very helpful lately. LinkedIn is obvious. Make sure you get your stuff ready because you're communicating something. So digital media is to do research and also to present your brand. The one thing I never thought about was YouTube. Lots of companies put ton of content on YouTube, and you can find out what the CEO said, what the head of marketing said, what the head of growth said in YouTube. I found it very helpful when I did this cybersecurity transition, because they had put a lot of content out there, and I just went through about 10 of them. And when I went to my interview, I picked out some of their language, their taxonomy, their vernacular, if you will, because in that real conversation, you might not be able to pick up. Every company has a language. I can already hear talking to Ian for the last couple of days, his company has a certain language. You can hear Securonics has a different type of language. You can start picking up that and getting comfortable with what people say. The other ones, Facebook is a new thing to me. Google basically posts a lot of their jobs on Facebook. We have started to do that recently because that is a group of people that's there. You can find passive candidates. You can also announce to friends and colleagues that are looking for jobs. Obviously, you need to find your comfort level in doing that on Facebook, but Facebook is becoming more and more an opportunity for people to post jobs, etc. For me, I never thought of this till I joined this company. Most of our organization is millennials, and millennials go on Instagram a lot, and we communicate now on Instagram consistently because that's where we can find these type of developers who are interested in our type of job. So we're there. And then on a Twitter basis, some organizations have a marketing department or a investor relations department or a CEO who may be interested in Twitter, and you get to hear the current sentiments of the organization through that. The point of this slide is be up on your digital skills, use it for research, and use it to communicate your brand. All right, we're almost to the end. So before we go into Q&A, wanted to highlight that our second session is coming up December 8th at 12 p.m. CST, and Nikki, Ian, and myself will be presenting. Nikki will be taking a lead on that, given that she is actually in the business of day-to-day recruiting, and our focus there is about the execution. Now, how you've done your discovery, you've developed a plan, whether it's a reactive or proactive situation, we can discuss it, but at that point, how do you engage and execute there? And all best laid plans are changeable. The world is real, and the agility, the ability to pivot is another part of our discussion in our next session. So with that, obviously, sick and bears, and we will go to the Q&A portion of our session. Greg, back to you.
Thank you, Dilshan. And we have a number of questions that have come in. Thank you all for supplying these. And if you have a question you haven't already typed in, go to that little Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. It'll highlight and you can ask some questions there. We have 2 or 3 questions about networking. And so in a career transition, what do you suggest? What are your recommendations in terms of how people use their network, and what does networking mean? Some have asked, what are you creating as an elevator pitch that you want to use in your networking conversations, and then ultimately how do you transfer or translate that elevator pitch into content for a successful interview? So networking first, then conversion of your elevator speech into more of a network interview format.
I will take a part of it, and maybe Ian can take part of it. So networking, and to me, networking is a relationship. And I think people often find themselves wanting to network when they need a job. My advice to you, especially those of you who are not in a hurry and a proactive situation, list out, do your discovery, do your planning, and then look at your inventory of people you have and start to engage them in a relationship to reciprocate, to do things without needing something. That's the best thing. I have about 20 people, 25, that I engage on a quarterly basis. It's on my calendar. I actually go for lunch, have a coffee, or even send a text message saying, I'm thinking of you for Thanksgiving. I wish you your family well. It is very easy for me to get phone calls back because I have done for others without needing anything. So that is my first piece of advice about networking. If you are in a hurry because you have not had the time, some of my friends said, Zilshan, that's interesting. You're wired that way. I have no time for it. I have 3 kids. I have lots of things. I'm doing an MBA. I have a big job that I don't have time for that. It's okay to be authentic when you're reaching out to people. If you have a direct need, to be very real, saying, hey, here's my situation. I would be appreciative of this, because some people approach you with a false request and that can get very annoying. So when you are not, if you have not done your homework and you're not built proactive relationships, if you're in a reactive situation, my advice to you is be genuine in those engagements and ask for that help, and then assist in that conversation saying, I need this now, but please know that in this time I need it, but I am more than willing to reciprocate that. I find people to be very open to that engagement as well. So those are my 2 points, and I'll hand it over to Ian.
Yeah, I think Dilshan's well, I frankly don't have a ton to add. I think one of the big pieces is that idea of working your network consistently. And I similar to Dilshan, I have a handful of individuals who I just reach out to on a regular basis for no other reason than just say hello and just see how they're doing, to make it then easier if and when that conversation comes up. I think the other piece of it is to think about those that have come to you, or that you have helped, to be able to say, hey, not as a to turn it around, but to be able to say, I'm now in a position. I think Dilshan's point is well made, which is the authentic ask. Here's where we are. Here's where I am. And that vulnerability, I think, goes a long way.
I want to add one more thing. And if you look at your network, right? I did a class, I think about a year ago, with a group of people. This was a women in technology organization, and they wanted sort of my advice on networking. I would look at your inventory of network and break them down into 3 buckets, okay? One is your strategic network. These are people who are mentors and sponsors who can guide you. The other part of the network is operational. So I consider recruiters, and no differentiate to just recruiters, but they could be a part of your operational networking, meaning they're helping you get to some kind of outcome. And the third bucket in your network is your development network, considering people like Ian, maybe people like Nikki, who are in that business, depending on the context, who are just guiding you. Maybe you have somebody in your life who you are completely willing to share some of your areas of opportunity, and they're constantly trying to help you become a better version of yourself, right? So look at your network and break them down into those 3 buckets and see whether you're over-indexed on one or the other. As any good business person, diversification matters, and make sure your network is diversified in those 3 buckets. That'll help you pivot as you go forward.
Let's do some rapid fire things in the few minutes that we have left. One question is curious about whether in the 3rd wave of COVID, employers are actually hiring individuals who will travel. Do you see that in your own companies? Maybe Nikki, you could share on that as well.
So I would tell you, I can do a quick answer. We are hiring quite a bit of activity. We are limiting the amount of travel to urgent. So we have a lot of key customers, but it has to be under pretty explicit understanding as to why you're going, just for the sake of the safety of the employee and our customer. So we are doing some, but it is not the norm, if you will.
Anything there, Nikki?
Yeah, and we are hiring as well, and I would echo what Ian said. It's very minimal travel. While we do have people that we have identified that we want them to relocate to the area, we haven't relocated anyone during this time. So yes, we are definitely hiring.
Nikki, back to you with this one. There are seasonal hiring going on in lots of organizations, Macy's, Dollar Tree, I'm sure JCPenney as well. That the questioner is asking, so you can document all day long, but those jobs are basically intended to be non-permanent. So what do you do with that? How do you leverage that if you're in a seasonal temporary job? How do you leverage that inside the organization for future development?
Yeah, I mean, I really think it goes back to what Dilshan and Ian have talked about in terms of having a plan. I mean, if your plan is to start as a temporary employee, what is your target goal? And being able to have those conversations with the individuals within those stores, the recruiter or the general manager that you connected with that helped you get the role, that would be the best way to really kind of, I would say, network your way into a position.
Great. There's a question about a gap in a resume. Maybe it's to care for elderly parents or in terms of child rearing or some other thing that's taking you out of the market for a little while. How can you proactively deal with that, or should you wait until people ask about that in the interview?
I'll let Nikki answer that because Nikki's probably mostly dealing with many of these things. I have an opinion. But my friend Nikki can do this one because she lives it every day.
Yes, I mean, I think for me that this is just a different time, and I am of the camp of transparency is always the best. However, you don't always have to offer information right up front. I mean, great recruiters are going to notice the gap and they're going to probably ask you about it. The good thing is you have to focus on your skill sets and your abilities and what it relates to the actual position. And that's where I think a lot of people do get, I would say, tripped up a little bit because they want to over index on the gaps and not focus on what they're actually good at and how it relates to the position that they are seeking.
Yeah, I would add, and I think it's a great point for Nikki, is you would not be the first nor the last to have a gap, and it's not an indication of skill set. It's an indication of something else. And if it's for something personal, I'm with Nikki. It doesn't have to be revealed, and focus on what you bring to the role. You can be transparent, and then you move on.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes there might be a level of embarrassment. I think we talked about that elevator speech. Be okay with weaving your personal story into that elevator speech, but not in a great level of detail. I mean, I personally have been on the side of seeking a new job because that's what I wanted, but I've also been on the side of having to do it because I was forced into doing that because my role was eliminated or whatever that was. And so I've got that, I would say, elevator speech down to where I don't over index on that. I really focus on what I've done and what I have accomplished.
I will also add to this, right? You are special, you are powerful, you are important. So walk tall, okay? If someone doesn't give you the time of day, be caring, be nice. Don't waste your time. Move on to the next thing, because the thing you will not get is time back. I have spent most of my life trying to please other people, and I have stopped doing that. I spend time with the companies and people that care about me the most, and that comes generally from my heart. I can see my colleagues nodding. Don't just for the sake of sport trying to break down a company. Go to something else.
On a related topic, there are two things being asked here. One is, should I avoid putting dates on my resume because I'm operating in my mid-50s? I assume that person's talking about maybe their education dates. And the other question that's related is, can you suggest a starting place for an empty nester who hasn't worked in 30 years? How do you reconcile kind of that big a gap? And also then, as far as resumes go, as hiring authorities, do you need dates? Would you prefer not to see dates?
So I would say, this is one guy's opinion, Nikki, I'd love your thoughts as well. I personally, on the date front, I would, you have a certain time frame that you would go back to, But I personally, when I'm reviewing resumes, I'm looking all the way back because it's telling me a story. It's telling me about the individuals, and I don't put a lot of I don't do the math to figure out how far back we're looking. I just look at what are they bringing, because it's also not how far back, but what is the length of time in a role. I think that's a big piece of it as well, because that tells an important story versus 1 year here, 6 months here. If it's multiple years, there's wisdom that individual is going to potentially bring to the role, and that intrigues me.
Ditto. I would say the same thing. I think it again, I like what Dilshan said about if there's a company that's going to be hung up on specific dates and that's all they're asking you about, that might not be the place that you want to land. It is about storytelling, and I think being able to craft a compelling story on a piece of paper is something that I would be more focused on. I would add this one piece of advice though: just make sure that the dates on your resume match what's on your LinkedIn profile. Because I can tell you that I look at that, and TA leaders and TA professionals, we do fact check that way, but we're not as concerned about the quote the appearance of how old someone may be. We're just making sure that this person has a high level of integrity, and there's a level of attention to detail that we can tell from having those two pieces coincide with one another.
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit, and this is a little bit harder work, right? I I don't care the dates. You can take it off, keep it on, but being current is important. So and you may not have the time to hang out with Nikki downtown and keep up with what's happening at JC Penney or the recruiting world, but there are other ways: reading information, getting your digital feeds, probably being a part of a podcast group that's kind of sharing the latest and greatest. Staying up with your subject is more important than the date it is. And I have found people who are much more senior in career, far more apt and more knowledgeable. So some of the resources coming out of college. So to me, it's about capability and capacity.
One question is about the types of questions you should be prepared to ask in an informational interview. I think they're asking about questions that they, as a candidate, should bring with them in an informational interview, kind of an early stage interview. I hope I've read that correctly.
First, I will say do have questions, because I have come across people that would say, no, Nikki did a great job, and I have all the questions answered by the recruiting team. Kind of personally offended that you don't want to ask me a question. So I would always ask questions. So create a list of questions. I would not go for things that are probably on the company website. Like if it's a publicly traded company asking for what its revenue is, I wouldn't do that. But I would go for questions like, what's your company culture like? What does it take to be successful here? Tell me more about your product. What is your growth strategy? These are things that companies don't put on their 10Q, 10Ks. And even if you wanted to, you wouldn't find out. Nobody would be offended. So stay away from the obvious ones and add some stuff, and especially the intangible things. You'd find people to be very generous, and everybody likes to tell their story. So I would absolutely get 1 or 2 questions ready.
Yeah. Interviews that end with the candidate saying, no, I don't think I have any other questions are not great. You need to be able to express that. So there's a question about what your thoughts are relative to a Biden-Harris administration and the types of jobs that might be created in that environment. I want to tackle that. Will the change of administration affect in your companies the kinds of jobs that you are anticipating will be available?
Yeah, I don't know about that's a fabulous question, by the way. A Biden-Harris administration, from a real estate software organization, I don't know that while that's an important piece right now, the elephant in the room is COVID. It's what is going to happen as an organization for us, and especially with our customers, with a prolonged economy, with a prolonged drag. It's absolutely, let's get to the other side of this. I don't know what a Biden-Harris administration will bring. I think right now our focus is what does the next 6 to 9 months look like, and how do we equip ourselves financially through that, with the hope that on the other side of that, with the new administration, with the vaccine, with a reopening, I'd like to think there would be a flourish of opportunity.
Well, I think with that, we're going to call the end of our time together. It's almost 1 o'clock. Thank you all so much for your attendance, for the interest that you have, and thanks to Baylor and the Office of Alumni Engagement for allowing us to present this to you today. And please come back December the 8th with more questions, more insight. We'll tackle the execution side of career transition in that session, and we're very grateful for your time and attendance, and know that we're praying for you even as we are waiting for our next session to begin. Thanks a lot.